Hello friends, this is Growl. Today I want to go over specific Resto Druid gameplay in Mythic Plus for Shadowlands. You may be in the process of deciding what class you want to main, and this video is designed to give you some insight as to what I think about the current state of Resto Druid, and what gameplay will be like for dungeon healing. I'm going to cover the basics in this video, along with some of the covenant and talent choices I think may be best. And at the end, I'm going to give my best guess of how I would rank it, and then answer some more common questions that I get from my stream. Druid healing comes almost entirely from heal over time effects. Almost all of your healing spells in one way or another apply heals over time. Druid Mastery increases the amount of healing done for each hot on the target, so to do big healing, it's important to layer multiple hots at once. Anticipating damage is the name of the game, and although it can be hard to catch up if you fall behind, with a solid rotation you can easily stay ahead. One of Druid's biggest strengths is that they are non-cooldown reliant. You can do reasonably big party healing at any time as long as you were prepared for it. Druids tend to be very flexible and great for pugs, since your team doesn't need to worry much about your healing. While Covenant abilities may give some strong cooldown potential, you can still do big healing without it. Druids also have fairly easy passive damage with Sunfire. Sunfire has a 40-yard range and it hits its target and everything around it. It's extremely efficient and safe to use, so you'll always have a reasonable damage contribution with little effort. Utility is also a major strong suit, offering many different forms of mob control and a combat res. Shadowlands saw some buffs in the way other healers can deal with Mythic Plus affixes. However, Druid has always been strong at dealing with the difficult healing checks like Bursting or Grievous. Ironbark is the strongest tank external, considering decreasing damage taken and increasing healing over time over 12 seconds on only a 90-second cooldown. You'll have this available for almost every difficult trash pack in the dungeon if timed right. Lastly, Druids are an extremely mobile class. You can shapeshift for increased movement speed and wild charge to move quickly from place to place. Druid is by far the most mobile healer, and playing anything else after it feels slow. Especially when leveling and world questing, being able to shapeshift instantly to travel form feels awesome. Now some weaknesses. Although Sunfire is pretty easy free damage, overall Druid's damage is lower compared to specs like Holy Paladin and Disc Priest. Not only is it lower, but Druid also doesn't have any passive damage in their healing rotation, so you always have to go out of your way and stop healing in order to do damage. This is especially noticeable when you're still learning the dungeons and mechanics, since it can be really tough to know when it is safe. Cat weaving is definitely a fun part of the damage rotation, however it's also a bit more complicated than the other healing specs. Since Druid is reliant on mostly heal over time, you need a better understanding of dungeons and damage patterns. If you don't have any hots out, it can be very difficult to catch up from heavy group damage. This dependence on knowledge is honestly really important for every healing class, but especially for Druid. Druid also has no party-wide damage reduction. Although Ironbark is a great tank external, you have no way to reduce group damage, you just need to heal through it. This is noticeable when you have multiple squishy party members that need heavy healing at the same time. I do also want to mention keybinds. If you've been playing Druid for years, you might not realize how big of a difference it is, but Druid definitely has the highest number of keybinds among all the healers. Having the most utility can be a blessing and a curse. It's definitely a bit of a learning curve to set up and get used to all the keybinds, and for some players it's even a big turnoff. In Shadowlands, you get to align with one covenant, and for Druid, I think the best option is Night Fae. The signature ability isn't too useful, it just gives you another shapeshift form with a short blink that can be handy for getting out of danger. The class ability is what we're really after, Convoke the Spirits. Convoke casts a flurry of 16 random Druid spells over 4 seconds. It is a channel, however you can cast while moving. Convoke favors whichever shapeshift form you are in. For example, if you're in human form, it will give you mostly heals. But if you're running Feral Affinity in cat form, it will give you mostly damage. This spell feels really powerful and fun to play. There really isn't too much randomness to it. It will be a pretty powerful healing or damage cooldown regardless of what spells you get. It fills a big void that Druid has in being able to catch up when behind. If you use your Convoke in human form, you'll be able to catch up and bring your party back to full health even if you weren't ready for the incoming damage. You will be able to craft legendary items through the Torghast Forge, and each character may have one legendary equipped at a time. Right now, my favorite legendaries have been the Dark Titan's Lesson and Verdant Infusion. The Dark Titan's Lesson, or the Life Bloom legendary, allows you to have 2 Life Blooms active at once instead of 1, and doubles the bloom healing, both at the end of the heal and during the heal if you're running the photosynthesis talent. This can be good for putting out a lot of healing, but it also can be a lot to juggle to keep both of them active, and isn't as useful when there's only single target damage or no damage going out. Verdant Infusion empowers your Swiftmen, causing it to not remove a heal over time effect and also extend the duration of all hots on the target. You can use this to extend really potent hots for extremely global efficient tank healing. I think both of these legendaries are solid, and you may end up switching between them depending on preference and which dungeon you're doing. It is possible in higher level keys where time becomes an issue that the healer should run a legendary to help contribute with damage, like Circle of Life and Death. This is the talent setup that I've been running in dungeons, mostly with the Swiftmen legendary. Cenarian Ward and Soul of the Forest synergize extremely well with it, since you can use the Swiftmen legendary to extend your Cenarian Ward, and you can also use your Swiftmen more liberally to get more Soul of the Forest enhanced spells. I've been seeing other druids run a wide range of other talents as well, such as Abundance, Renewal, Balance Affinity, Cultivation, and even Overgrowth. It's a little too soon to tell what the best setup is going to be. It's going to mostly come down to what the toughest parts of the dungeons are when we're getting up to really high keys. Now that we have a baseline of understanding, how would I rank Druid for dungeon healing in Shadowlands? I would like to give Druid a solid 9 out of 10 score. It's a strong healer with lots of utility that will definitely be one of the best Mythic Plus healers. Druid's kit is great for dungeon content and a small group size, so even if other healers start rising up in popularity, Druid will always be strong. Before I wrap up the video, I want to talk about some of the questions I get asked most on my stream that didn't get covered in this video. What's the best affinity to go with? Feral Affinity offers some awesome benefits in added single target damage and movement speed. I think in general it's still better than Moonkin Affinity, and you would always prefer to use it. Moonkin Affinity does have Typhoon though, so I think you need to be at least familiar with using it. You'll probably need Typhoon for some dungeons, and for the Sanguine Affix for sure. Unless there is huge synergy with some legendary that I'm not seeing though, Feral is just better for damage, because it does higher single target damage, and also you can do the entire rotation while moving. How much damage does Heart of the Wild and Convoke do? It's okay, you aren't going to be topping the meters in a boss fight or anything with it, but you still can contribute some meaningful damage. It fills a hole in the Druid kit as a way to do burst damage. On-demand damage is great, and even though it isn't as powerful of a cooldown as something like Paladin Wings, it's still really nice to have. The damage it gives isn't out of control, but it's still a way you can contribute meaningful burst damage as a healer. It's really tough though when you're just learning the dungeons to know when it's safe to use it, since you don't want to waste your Convoke and not have it for an emergency. But as people get better and better, we'll see it being an important part of the Druid damage rotation, I think. Does it feel bad playing with such low haste? This is mostly a question from returning Druid players from BFA. Since the removal of corruption and the stat squish, your casts are going to be a lot slower than you're used to if you're playing a geared Druid right now in live. It definitely takes some getting used to, but it doesn't feel clunky or bad to me. Honestly, I almost like it better. It gives me more time to think and makes my casts feel more important. When you have 50% haste, you can sort of just slam out a bunch of hots immediately and you don't have to think as much about incoming damage. That covers everything I wanted to talk about for Druid dungeon gameplay in Shadowlands. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be covering tons of Shadowlands healer content from beginner all the way up to high levels of Mythic Plus. Happy keying!